The Pac-12 has a media rights deal. Let's get right into it because I know Twitter was ablaze with skepticism, as it should have been, if we are being brutally honest about this deal. And I hesitate to call it a deal, but if we're being honest about the situation in the Pac-12, this is status quo. And if I'm a Pac-12 fan, and in this case, if I am a fan of Washington State and Oregon State, I am thrilled. This is a really good deal for Oregon State and Washington State. And that's where it ends. That's it. Going forward, this deal has no impact and no ramifications on what's going to happen in 2026, which I think is a really big talking point in this whole conversation. I understand that the Pac-2 had to get a deal done for this upcoming season. I totally get that. This deal does not help you get a deal for 2026 because it is largely the exact same deal you've had. And in my opinion, it does not add value. And a lot of people will tell you, well, they're on CBS and they're on ESPN. Well, if you look at the details of this contract or the details that we believe make up the contract, and you look at this right here, what do you notice about the CBS and the ESPN games? That's the biggest question to me. And the answer is Washington, who is in the Big Ten, whose TV rights are currently held by CBS, is going to be on CBS. Albeit that game, and I think it's of note, that game, the Washington State game, is significant, right? I think the fact that the Oregon State, Washington State game is going to be on CBS, unequivocal win. But then you start looking at Oregon State and you say to yourself, okay, Oregon State has Houston and Cal on ESPN. Well, why is that significant? Because those are already partners with ESPN. Cal, obviously, in the ACC, Houston in the Big 12, and again, Washington in the Big 10. And I bring that up and I point that to your attention because there's no new money in this deal. There is very little cost, if any at all, and we've talked to people at the highest echelons of television throughout the day today trying to get some details on this because notice the Pac-12 didn't put out a deal, didn't put out a press release with all the fanfare. We got a media rights deal. Here's the 10s and 20s and 30s of $40 million a year that we're bringing in. None of that happened because it's not a media rights deal. It is a broadcast deal for two football teams that make up a very small league known as the Pac-2. Jake, the biggest problem I have with this deal for the Pac-12, it doesn't involve the Pac-12, it involves the Pac-2.
Absolutely. And I think that, this deal is being characterized as like a new media rights deal and everything's amazing. And like, if you look at all the Pac-12 homers, like they're going to tell you that, it's like you just solved world hunger. And I'm just sitting here saying like, piggybacking off everything he just explained, like, yeah, there's no new money in this deal. The ESPN contingent was already there. Like, basically, you just did a deal here that you had to do. This isn't like some, just incredible, like 4 or 5 year deal that, secures you into the future and brings in that revenue that is much needed. That's not what this is. And so, Pac-12 Homer is going to tell you that, oh, well, you guys are just being negative. Like, you guys are just hating on this. But all I'm saying is, I don't feel like it's negative to sit here and say, yeah, you were already, like Cal and Houston were already going to be on ESPN, right? Like Washington was already going to be on CBS. So this isn't some like groundbreaking thing. And that's what I really struggle with when it comes to the Pac-2 trying to become once again the Pac-12 is anytime anything happens in this conference, it's spun into this like, just this, oh man, what a huge win, like unequivocal success. Like, my God, how could they have done this? And it's like, well, actually, it's just you kind of partnered with the people that you kind of know. and you're not really making a lot of money on this, and it's not costing you a ton of money. Like, it's just kind of vanilla. It's kind of like, yeah, all right, cool. You announce what, you announce your TV deal. That's cool for 2025.
Well,
You
really didn't even announce your TV deal. It kind of leaked out from a couple of different places. And notice when the great radio wizard of the Northwest, who is easily the most knee-padded dude when it comes to the Pac-12, he shines that turd every chance he gets. Right?
Oh, dear.
Excuse me.
Oh, my.
Was he ranting and raving about it? I don't know. I'm not paywalling for his content.
Seems like a great opportunity to slurp and splash.
But there's no great money windfall here. And when, again, I'm going to put this graphic back up, I think the important thing to note here is that, yes, Oregon State has home games on ESPN with Cal and with Houston, which is a win, unequivocal.
Mm-hmm.
That's a win. But I'm told by sources in the TV industry that that's a licensing deal. The Pac-12 has agreed to cover the cost of production. ESPN will simply, according to our sources, pay for the talent who's going to do the play-by-play color and sideline. Pac-12 Enterprises, the production arm of the Pac-12 conference, will produce those games. ESPN will air them. That's called a licensing fee for all intent and purposes.
Mm-hmm.
That means that you're basically saying, hey, I have an open broadcast slot. You're in business, again, with a partner of ours, Cal, on August 30th, 7:30 Pacific time. Yes, let's take that game. Because if I look at the schedule and we start looking at, hey, what else is on Saturday, August 30th? And what else does it appear could line up that way? Portland State and BYU. Well, would you rather have Portland State and BYU, or would you rather have Cal and Oregon State? I think you'd rather have Cal and Oregon State.
Right.
And my guess is BYU ends up on the family of networks. That's a home game in Provo. But it is very convenient. It works out for everybody. And I think it's very smart for Cal and Oregon State to schedule that game in late August, where it gives you an opportunity to be seen. I think that's huge. And then you look at September 26th with the Oregon State game and Houston, and you start to understand that, yeah, it probably is another one of those situations. What is that, week 5 on the 26th, which is a Friday night, I would remind you. Florida State at Virginia. That game's going to be on ESPN. TCU at Arizona State. So my guess is those times in those games, those two games, we don't have a time for those games yet. My guess is you're going to see an early, a mid, and then Pac-12 after dark on a Friday night.
Right.
Or you'll see, I would certainly believe that Florida State and Virginia, are on ESPN. And then maybe you're looking at a situation where TCU and Arizona State are on ESPN2. And then you can have Houston and Oregon State on ESPN as the late game. That makes a hell of a lot of sense to me, right? And if it's a licensing deal and all you got to do is pay airfare, hotel, and a game check to broadcasters, if you're ESPN, doesn't that make all the sense in the world to have late game content that you don't have to pay millions of dollars for? Yeah. It absolutely does. And then you flip over to the Washington State-Washington game, and you start saying to yourself, okay, well, we've got Oregon State-Washington State. That's on CBS. That's on November 1st. Okay, well, let's talk about what's going on November 1st. Okay, that's what? Week 10. November 1st is a Saturday. And if we look at the Big Ten, and I think this is the important thing, you look at the Big Ten and you look at what are their big games that week. Well, I don't necessarily believe that Michigan State at Minnesota is going to be a late window, right? Because if we look at the time on that game, It is 4:30 or 5 o'clock Pacific on CBS. So that right there tells you there's not a big game in the Big Ten that week. And I would agree with that. The biggest game potentially is Penn State at Ohio State. If all things shake out on paper on April 29th, the biggest game that week is Penn State at Ohio State. Is there anybody who believes that that's a night game? No, because what do we know about Ohio State? Ohio State has already said we're not playing November games at night at home.
Facts.
We're not doing that. So it works out perfectly. That's why I say, hey, it's not a cash windfall, but this is a really good deal as far as reach, more eyes on the screen. Okay, great. But I'm telling you, and I will parrot what somebody in television told me today, this deal has zero impact, zero bearing into 2026. Because if we go on the fee that 5 other people told me today, legit, all the people I reached out to today said, well, they were getting $1 million a year last year per game. I mean, if you do some math on that, $1 million a game is not a whole lot of money when it comes to the reimagined Pac-12. That's not great money. And if you look at, excuse me, if you look at the potential here, this feels like this broadcast deal feels like less than $1 million a game.
Yeah, it's not substantial. That's for sure.
It's certainly not a raise because they'd have told you that. And we don't know what the money is, but there's in no way, shape, or form is this a cash windfall. The ESPN and CBS parts of this deal are significant because it gives you reach, and those games legitimately are on the mothership and on CBS. That's an unequivocal win. You're going to have to eat some of the cost on that by producing those games. And let's not forget, Pac-12 Enterprises produces all CW broadcasts. This is not a cash windfall. This is not a huge win for the Pac-12. Washington State and Oregon, I think this is a great, or Oregon State rather, excuse me, Washington State and Oregon State, this is a great deal for them. Gives them exposure. They're going to make a little bit of money each. I think that's a great deal. Going forward, this deal has no bearing, and I understand why you're excited, but I'm going to go back, and you guys know what I'm going to play right now. I'm going to go back, and I'm going to tell you that JD Wicker looks like a complete jerk off now because you're the athletic director, and you're sitting around telling people unsolicited. Nobody had a gun to your head. There was no duress when you said this to a group of your fans and donors.
End of next month, we will have the MOU done for our television deal. So we will know what our TV deal is going to be, who our partners are going to be. I will say this, they're entities that you're familiar with, that you would recognize. We're going to get great exposure, and the really good thing is we're going to get more exposure. It's not just going to be football and men's basketball, but it's going to be all of our sports are going to have the opportunity for this increased exposure. It's going to be increased revenue, which is a big thing for us. So that's really the next big piece. Once we know that, then we can go recruit that 8th football playing member. We need one more football playing member that has all of its sports to meet FBS rules or NCAA FBS rules. And then after that, we'll figure out if we're adding 1, 2, or 3 more schools, and whether they're coming in all of their sports. They might be coming in some of their sports.
I don't know why you would say that unsolicited. Why would you go off script when nobody was pressuring you to do that? Because this deal the deal you just heard JD Wicker, the athletic director at San Diego State, describe does not exist. Doesn't exist. There's no memo of understanding. There's a TV deal for Washington State and Oregon State in 2025 that has no bearing and no impact on conversations moving forward.
Yeah.
It's just another misstep out of the Pac-12. And if I'm the Mountain West, I think this is an unequivocal win for the Mountain West Because if the Pac-12 today had announced hey, each of our schools for the next 4 years is getting $10 million per school, and we're going to be on ESPN every Friday and Saturday night, and that's a loss for the Mountain West. That's not what happened today. What happened today is you announced a status quo with the CW and a licensing agreement with CBS and ESPN.
Yeah, and I think your best point is they didn't even really announce that. Like, right?
Yeah.
Like they didn't even, it wasn't like it was some big rollout that this happened. It's a great point that it just kind of got leaked out and started showing up. And, guys like the radio wizard up north are talking about it. And, you just kind of have people talking about it. But again, it for 2026, it's just quiet. There's nothing happening. Like there's no noise, there's nothing, not even speculation.
Like talking to a TV guy today, I said, do you believe, and have you guys been talking about a long form deal beyond 2025? And the answer was no, we have not that I'm aware of, and he would be aware of it. And the hard part is when you start talking to school administrators, reaching out to schools across the Mountain West and the Pac-12 today, nobody wants to talk about it. Mainly because they're in litigation, right? You still have this, has a mediator been picked? Are we, you're still in this awkward lawsuit situation, which again came up in multiple conversations with TV people today. And I think that's a black cloud hanging over the Pac-12 trying to get a deal going forward because, frankly, if you're the exiting members of the Mountain West and you don't come out on the positive in this mediation and I think it'll happen in mediation, but if it goes to court, if you lose and you've got to pay exit fees and poaching fees, you can't take $1 million per game kind of deal.
You won't survive on that.
That's a loss leader right there. And on top of that, the house settlement and roster limits and, you have schools ending women's sports programs and secondary sports programs and club sports programs.
That's what I'm saying. I've always struggled to understand how the Pac-12 is going to come out of this thing just rolling in cash. I've never understood it. I don't, I think they'll get a deal, but I don't think that the deal that they're going to get is going to be some juggernaut of a media rights deal. And again, it's like, I wish people could talk about this without it becoming so personal, because I feel like anytime it gets brought up, like, hey, we don't think that there's, going to be some awesome TV deal here, that they're going to have to kind of patchwork something together and kind of, figure it out and frankly find a way to survive on less for a time in an effort to get to a better deal. Like that just is taken so personally and so negatively, but I don't know how it turns out any other way. I don't know. Like the only thing that I kind of took away from this TV deal, this media rights deal that everyone seems to be referring to this as, is I was just like, yeah, this just kind of feels like, slap together's harsh, but it just kind of feels like, hey, like this is what you could put together. You got, Washington State and Oregon State had to kind of figure it out. Obviously we're approaching the start of a new academic year this summer. We're heading into May here, like academics, schedules or calendars, I should say, end in June and July. Like you're moving here. Like you've only got 2 months. You had to get something done here for 25. So I think anyone saying like, hey, this deal is somehow representative of like what they could possibly get or something, I don't even think we can say that, because I just think this was so situational for Washington State and Oregon State. It's not, it would be a different conversation if we were saying, hey, like all the schools that had joined the conference got this particular deal. Even that would be a different conversation, but that's not even what this is. So that's why I really struggle with, like, one, I don't think that this means really anything for 26 and beyond. Two, I don't think it's indicative of what the value of the group of schools going to the Pac-12 would be. And three, I just think it's another opportunity for the Pac-12 mouthpieces to use it as a launching off point to say that the conference is going places, when I'm not confident that it is.
Yeah, and I also think there was a significant change at the top of Fox Sports 1 today. FS1 and Fox had an unfortunate departure You can go and read about that through a scandal. So now there's a little tumult at Fox, which I think is not good for anybody. Because I think Fox Sports is going to have to play a significant role in whether it be the Mountain West or the Pac-12. Fox needs that late content. And I think I would lean towards believing that the Mountain West is in a significantly better position because, again, you have relationships in place. And I go back to all the conversations about the Pac-12 has leverage and they're pushing down on the Mountain West. I don't believe that that's the case. I think when you are putting these two entities, the Pac-12 against the Mountain West, they both have a lot to lose and far less to gain. And I just think the mountain that the Pac-12 has to climb to be a viable entity is far steeper than the Mountain West, because the Mountain West is already a viable entity. The Mountain West already has really solid, proven leadership. The Mountain West already has a TV deal in place. The Mountain West is already down the road negotiating an extension of their TV deal. Like, you just have so many more advantages, and you have signed contracts that you're trying to defend in court and mediation. Listen, if you're, I don't know that anybody looking at this case can even argue. If you want to look at the Pac-12 versus the Mountain West, even just in this lawsuit, the Mountain West has papers signed by the Pac-12 who knowingly and without duress signed those agreements. I mean, that's the lion's share of the battle. That's a much better place to be in. I think the biggest issue that I continue to hear about is the Mountain West cannot conduct business going forward because the exiting members are still on their board.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest issue, which is why I think very wisely the Mountain West wants to get mediation going. It was their request to take this to mediation. I don't think the Pac-12's in any hurry. Last I heard, and I could be wrong, they still don't have a mediator selected, at least not publicly. And I've asked multiple sources, hey, is there a mediator? Who's that going to be? Because I also think whoever winds up mediating that's a really important figure. And while it's different than arbitration because a mediator is really in place to try and help communication be more fruitful and bring these arguments to an end, an arbitrator makes a decision. A mediator does not. A mediator is far more of a conduit. You don't go to mediation without the desire to get something done in mediation.
Which, again, I think to your point, begs the question, is there, more so from the Pac-12 side, I would guess, than the Mountain West side, is there still some, negative sentiment about getting something done? I mean, because that's the hard part with the Pac-12. I feel like we never have a great grip on like where they are because we don't really hear from them outside of like fluff piece interviews that they do. We don't know, like, is the Pac-12, have they acquiesced at all? Have they come to the middle a little bit? Are they still in the same place that they were, where they're trying to, not poach teams, but just use those kind of tactics to try to gain an advantage somehow? Like, it's just difficult to understand what they're doing.
But if you go back to what Teresa Gould told Front Office Sports, and I continue to put people under the microscope for the words that they have spoken. I think in today's world, politics, sports, life, we have to hold people accountable for the things they say.
Facts.
Here's what Teresa Gould, the commissioner of the Pac-12, told Front Office Sports about, I would guess, this TV deal and others and what they needed out of it.
The one thing I keep saying to potential partners is, given where we are as a league, I don't want these partnerships to be transactional partnerships. I don't want this to be a media rights partner writing us a check and televising a bunch of games. We need these partnerships to be transformational at this point, and for somebody to really jump in with us and say, we want to help elevate and reimagine the new Pac-12.
Yeah. You're saying. I see what you're saying. See, like we're sitting here listening to this clip, and she says we don't want somebody to cut us a check and televise games. And what did you say?
That's exactly what this is.
And it kind of is.
I mean, it's both things, right? I mean, because you're not wrong. Obviously, we know that they're producing these games, and they
with
have that
the
cost.
CW. The CW is quite literally saying, "We'll give you the airtime. You guys produce the games."
So
you're cutting them a check,
yeah,
and you're putting their games on.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any question being on ESPN, no matter what the cost is. Because I also think one of the things I'm begging you to wrap your heads around, just because, and throw out any number, and let's say $1 million a game.
Yeah.
Let's say that this Pac-2 TV deal is worth $1 million a game. Because everybody today told me, well, that's what they got last year. My guess is, did they take a pay cut? What? Okay, great. $1 million a year. That's what your gross is. That's not what you're netting. Right? Think about it this way. Your 40 hours a week paycheck is for $1,000 pre-tax. Okay, so if you're producing the games, that means you're paying for the continuing cost of upgrading, maintaining your equipment, which we know they have a massive $100 million investment in. You are paying for producers, directors, camera people. You are paying for production assistants. You are paying for broadcasters. Because when the Pac-12 produces a game on CW, it's their broadcast crew. It's not the CW's. You're paying that cost. So now you're getting money, but you're spending money. You're not netting. You're not walking with $1 million a game. There's no way that that's happening. And if it is in fact true that Cal, for instance, Washington, for instance, Houston, asked ESPN to license those games, because if you're Houston, and I think this is really important, Houston, where they are in football, needs to be on TV. It's a big recruiting tool for them. So by broadcasting the Oregon State Houston game, you're not only, if you're ESPN, you're not only helping Oregon State, you're massively helping Houston. You're massively helping Cal, who's you're already in business with in the Big 12 and the ACC. And I was told by multiple sources today that the Big 12 and the ACC, in fact, were happy and requested and backed up the notion of, hey, let's broadcast those games that we're involved in, because it makes a lot of sense for them. So if you're just simply saying, okay, we'll pay you a licensing fee to put Oregon State and Washington State, Washington and Washington State, Washington and if we're going to put these games on ESPN and CBS, we'll pay you a licensing fee. You guys produce the games, which they're already doing. There's no way they're netting $1 million a game.
No.
There's no math that makes sense in.
So that's why I say I just, when I hear the transformational partner clip, I think about what Wicker said. I look at this, again, big air quotes, conference. And I say, like, dude, you guys have not changed. You are doing the same thing that you've always done, which unfortunately is going to get you the same result you've always got. And I know that that's like a cliche thing to say, but it's true. Like if you're not going to change, if you're not going to do something innovative with this conference to get outside of the normal box to bring more value in, like you're not going to get a great TV deal. And when I talk about like getting outside of the box, like in my opinion, this conference shouldn't be scared to go all streaming. This conference shouldn't be scared to get real creative around, your social media team, using every like arm you have outside of traditional linear TV to push this league's value. And frankly, with all due respect, you're not doing that. I don't see the Pac-12 posting nearly enough. I don't see any type of exciting things. I don't see
How are you
coming
not
soon stuff.
How are you
like,
not celebrating the fact that Boise extended their head football coach today? And not a small extension. It is, I don't know how many people saw it, but Spencer Danielson had his salary bumped to $2.2 million at Boise State. If I'm the Pac-2 and the future Pac-12, I am trumpeting that all over the place. Our schools are making money, and I don't care if they're in the Mountain West. I'm in branding and marketing.
Yeah.
Man, I don't care. If hey, listen, that's a future member of ours. Congratulations, coach, on your new $2.2 million deal.
What a year. College football playoff.
The future's bright.
Got Jincy drafted. Now you got your contract extension. Hell of a job, coach. Come on.
And I'm telling you, I would be all over that. I would be. And again, did the Pac-12 have anything to do with that? Maybe a very small piece. Maybe you're investing in Boise State's future. Not at all. The guy who should be getting a pat on the back for Danielson's contract, Ashton Ginty, had a lot to do with that. Ashton Ginty had a hell of a lot more to do with that than the Pac-12 did. But I don't care, right? I don't care. And again, I understand why you're putting out TV deals, and I understand why you're saying, hey, Washington State is going to be on CBS. Huge day for us. Hey, that's spectacular, and you should be doing that. But, man, I'm telling you right now, it is vitally important that people in this league, and I agree with you 100%, if I'm the Pac-12, I want ESPN+. If I am the Pac-12, I am aggressively marketing and pushing to TikTok and Instagram. I am all over that because that makes us money. I am all over that. And I don't know that they will be because I just don't think that they're forward-thinking people.
Yeah.
I think so many people are worried about, well, they're just on ESPN+. Yeah. What do you mean just? So anybody with an iPhone, anybody with an Android, anybody with a tablet, a computer, a smart TV, anybody that watches football can now find our games. Great. Fantastic. Because that's what ESPN Plus represents. And ESPN, let's not forget, this fall is supposed to go to direct to consumer. So I'm all in on the streaming thing. If I'm the Pac-12, hell, if I'm the Mountain West, I would love a deal where we're on ESPN Plus, because ESPN Plus has an F-load more reach than CBS Sports HQ does, which I can honestly tell you I've never not one time watched. Not once have I. I've watched Fox Sports Go, I think it's called, or whatever their app is. I think one time.
Yeah.
If you're in streaming, or if your product is in streaming and you're not on Amazon, if you are not on even Peacock, even the major brands, you better have your games on there, and you better be on ESPN Plus. That's what's so scary about this. You're on ESPN. Are those games going to be streamed on ESPN Plus? Well, I don't know, but based on what I see on the social media deals, the Washington State, Oregon State game is going to be on Paramount Plus. Huge. That's great. That is fantastic.
Yeah.
The Apple Cup will be on Paramount Plus. That's great. That's really good. How come the other games aren't going to be on ESPN Plus? How come they're not going to be available there? What is the CW streaming arm? Right? Like, those are all things that I view as missed opportunities. I have to believe, and maybe I'm giving them too much credit, I don't know. I have to believe they talked about that, right?
I mean, you would think so.
You have to believe.
It seems pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm giving them too much credit. All right, your thoughts. Are you guys feeling positive about the Pac-2's new TV deal, which is an old TV deal? Is this a big win for the Pac-12? Where do you guys come down on it? First in today, look at that, loaner phone. He's been a member for 14 months, red ass and all. A member for 14 months. Loaner phone, we appreciate you. T. Lawrence says CBS, ESPN going to force Pac-12 and Mountain West to merge. Nobody's forcing anybody to do anything. There's no forcing. Both conferences are up for media negotiations in 2026. Correct. But our sources have told us repeatedly, Gloria Nevarez has told the Pac-12, we'd like to talk about merging. Let's talk about a merger. Let's talk about a merger. And Teresa Gould and her constituents at the Pac-2 have said no, no, no at every turn.
No, no, no.
So the Mountain West, and I'll continue to say this, the Mountain West is not the problem here.
Yeah, I feel like they've tried to be solutions oriented.
Yeah, totally agree. Steve Stepanek, how are you, sir? The Big 12 is lucky they are not in this spot.
Yeah, well, that's what happens when you hire a good commissioner. I mean, honestly, like
what
happens.
I think you have to play offense when it comes to media rights. And again, I'll remind you that Gloria Nevarez was on this show, and what did she say? Hey, we're talking to our partners. Hey, we're moving the process forward. So the Mountain West is being proactive. And I feel like this move again today from the Pac-12, this is a defensive move. And there are certainly wins. Again, I'll say ESPN and CBS, unequivocal win. You might lose money on those games unless you get out to market and you put a lot of ad partnerships in those games, which I would hope you would do. One's the Apple Cup. You should be able to brand that and have an Apple
Seriously.
Cup sponsor, right?
Yeah.
That's a big game. But that's an unequivocal win. There is no doubt about that. There is no doubt about that. Wow, you guys, amazing. A lot of comments today. Who's at the top? Bobblehead Guru.
Okay.
Is this your first time here? Maury Alvarez, hello. First like. Woohoo. Maury, hope Florida's treating you well. Joseph Harper, hello. Mike Smith. Good to see you. Boyd Lake. Guys. Hey, guys. Is the Pac getting the pro rata they deserve? Well, they just might be getting the pro rata they deserve. My question is does either the Mountain West or the Pac-12 get a windfall? Do they get, because again, I always ask, what do you think a deal in 2026 is worth? And I continue to hear, well, is it going to be one deal or is it going to be multiple deals? Because if it's multiple deals, they're both going to lose.
Okay, me speculating, my opinion, not factual. It would be concerning to me if I was the Pac-12 and I knew who Gloria Nevarez talks to, because they know the relationship she has, clearly.
Certainly.
It would be concerning to me that the Pac-2 and its leadership, in my opinion, based on the information that we have, is viewed as kind of the stubborn kid in the room, viewed as the party that, asks for too much, doesn't do business the way most people would, like is kind of the stick in the mud in a sense, like they just make things more difficult. It would be concerning to me that if I'm the Pac-12 and I know that we're viewed like that maybe a little bit, that it's us, the Mountain West, and then all the TV partners, and we have to figure out how to fit into that sandbox. And if you're the TV partners, why would you want to work with someone who's a pain in the ass and doesn't regularly go to the college football playoff, right? Doesn't regularly return the ROI? Because that's what it is for TV partners, right? All TV partners are doing is saying, okay, what game can we sell ads into? What game can we try to make money on? Like that's their whole lifeblood, So they're looking at this situation, I'm assuming, just saying, yeah, you guys should merge.
Yeah.
Which is why I think, which is why I think Gloria Nevarez has been so outspoken about merging and has offered that and has, I think, she was on the show and told you guys why initially, hey, we knew that we had to help them. They needed help. We were going to help them. But I think I think Gloria wanted to try to use that initial outreach to help them with scheduling as a jumping off point to get into merger talks. And I think the fact that it's pretty well known now that Teresa Gould and company are not interested in that, to me, that
is just such a dereliction of duty.
Yeah, it's just shocking. And so you think about the ripples that creates in the pond, if you will. And I'm just sitting here saying, hey, if you're the Pac-12, at some point you're gonna have to play ball. At some point, you are going to be forced to do things you don't want to do, or you can simply not survive, because that's the alternative. And that's why I say when we're talking about like, hey, what is this media rights deal for 2025 mean? What does, how does it play forward? Like, that's why I keep saying I don't think it plays forward, or it has, any type of meaning for what you could do moving forward, because to your point with what you were saying earlier, like, you haven't even figured out who your mediator is going to be. Like, are you serious? Like, we don't have 5 years to mediate together.
No.
And specifically, the Pac-12 doesn't have loads of time. Because in my opinion, I've always been on this side. I do think if the Mountain West wanted to, they could lean on the Pac-12. You could say, hey, we're not going to help you. You're in the wind. Good luck affording all of this. And then find their way around the exiting members are preventing us from doing business. That's just a matter of time, because once those members leave, now you're good to go. And now the Pac-12 is out in the wind. So again, I just don't think anyone feels bad for the Pac-12. I don't think this is like, oh man, we gotta find a way, because they're not making it easier on themselves.
They're not. And I think when you start looking at this schedule and you start to understand that, I understand, you guys. I totally understand that people believe, people were tweeting at me today saying that this is more exposure and for every game across the sky. It's not. It's not, but at least you're getting the CW, which is giving you regional reach, which I think is paramount, because I don't think anybody in the upper East Coast, I don't think anybody in the Southeast, I don't think anybody in the state of Texas gives a rat's ass about Washington State and Oregon State. There's zero Q factor there. Now, maybe when you're playing Louisiana Tech, maybe when you're playing Wake Forest, Sam Houston, yeah, maybe when you're playing Lafayette or Houston, okay, great. But I don't think this is exponentially more reach for all of their games. And I don't know. I'm probably being redundant. I just don't see a lot of benefit if you're Fresno State or Boise State to have left.
Yeah, that's, and I think that's the crux of the conversation. I don't think you're being redundant at all. I think that we've seen this movie before with the Pac-12, where it's like, hey, something happens. Like, this graphic's a perfect example. Something happens. In this case, with this graphic, we got this group of schools. We're going to put out a graphic, and we're going to say, oh my goodness, our league's back in form. We're well on our way. Everything's amazing. But then when you go past that and you start to dig into, well, hold on a second. You don't have media rights for 26 and moving forward. So where's that revenue going to come from?
Yeah.
And then to piggyback off of that point, and this is where it gets a little repetitive, because we've talked about this a ton. But what did you tell these schools? What
did you promise?
Yeah, what was the sales pitch? What did you? Hey, we promise that you're going to get $10 million a year. Was that the promise? Like, because that's the problem.
What else do you have to recognize here? None of these deals are done. Has any of the exiting members, Fresno State, Colorado State, Utah State, have any of them formally in writing noticed the Mountain West that they are exiting from the conference and paid, I think it's a $5,000 deposit to leave the conference?
Right.
The answer is no, they have not. You know how we know that? Because they're still on the board of directors at the Mountain West. So you can't be under contract to two different entities. You can't sign a grant of rights and not exit from it. Right? Like, so you're not done in the Pac-12. You don't have J.D. Wicker, a memo of understanding. You don't have a grant of rights done. Isn't that where all of this starts moving forward? I would think it does.
Mm-hmm.
And when we talk about, hey, we're going to get a media rights deal done, how comfortable are you as a TV network? And again, this is not my thinking. I wish I were this smart. But people I talk to at the top of these networks, ask yourself, how comfortable are you signing a memo of understanding when a lot of the principals that are going to make up this new conference haven't exited their current contractual obligations?
Yeah.
And how comfortable are you when you know that when they do exit their situation, that they're going to be damaging some of your fellow TV membership, some of your constituents in the sports TV world? It's not a great look for anybody. And still, again, I'll go back to the new Pac-12 doesn't have a grant of rights or a memo of understanding, and does not have pen to paper on a contract to lock those new members into that league. And we're supposed to be surprised that you don't have a TV contract moving beyond 2025. Because I keep telling you this stuff, and J.D. Wicker keeps talking, and Teresa Gould keeps talking, and I'm just little old Monty over here, and you guys tell me I hate the Pac-12 and I don't know what I'm talking about. Well, go talk to Deep Throat in the Northwest and go do your back of the envelope calculations. Because the truth of the matter is, the Pac-12 is who we thought they were. And it's what you said a few minutes ago. When you keep doing the same thing and you're expecting a different outcome, now you as a Pac-12 fan, when you're sitting here expecting a different outcome and you're $10 million per school per year.
Back of the envelope calculations.
Now it's your fault. It's no longer the Pac-12's fault because they keep putting the shit in the bag and burning it on your front porch. And you keep thinking it's like chocolate cake or something.
Facts.
And it just turns out to be another dog turd that's on fire. Let them handle their business in a professional fashion where they actually live up to their obligations, where they're not shorting Comcast with accounting errors that they allegedly knew about and didn't say anything. And then when the conference meltdown, everybody's got to reach into their pocket. Let them, for once, do some real homework and not back of the envelope calculations, and not slander universities who are members that they're desperate to keep. Because that's the other thing that I keep going back to, like with this UCLA back of the envelope calculation bullshit.
Back of the envelope calculations.
Ask yourself, what if UCLA had to stay in that league? How would that relationship have worked out? That would not have been a good look. Why do you think everybody pulled up stakes and left together?
And by
they
the
were
way,
all talking about you behind your back.
to your point, why do you think USC did what they did to start this whole thing? I mean, I think it goes right in what you're saying, right? We all remember the infamous Carroll poll,
Yeah.
right? So, like, you know, I don't know, man. I'm not going to get, and, you know, I'm sure, you know, we've got thousands of comments or whatever. I'm sure there are people here, Pac-12 fan, I'm sure is, you know, defending your position and saying we're hating or whatever. We'll see in a minute. But I'm not going to be bothered by that stuff anymore because, frankly, I'm in a place with this conversation now where we on this show over the last, I don't know what, 2-3 years going through this process with the Pac-12, like, we're not fools on this anymore, bro. We've seen what you've done. We talk to people. We know what's happening. Like, we understand and know what to expect from you, behaviorally speaking. And you know, I'm not going to be surprised or upset anymore. And if you're the person, respectfully, really respectfully, if you're going to keep just expecting this conference to like do the right business thing or somehow to like reinvent the wheel, like, that's on you now, man. Like, at some point you got to graduate, bro. Like, I don't know what to tell you. You like, you got to move on from that thought process, man.
Yeah, they're not going to pull a 180 in business acumen and start doing things the way most people would have you do them. They're not going to do that, in my opinion. Alumindursky, a member for 20 months.
Nice.
That's right. Time flies when you're having fun. And I want you to understand, if you're just tuning in, we're talking about the new Pac-12 media rights deal. well, that's probably a stretch. The Pac-2 broadcast deal for 2025. It is, I think it's a good deal for where the Pac-2 is. The Pac-2 will have the majority of their games on the CW. Oregon State gets Houston, Cal, and Washington State on ESPN and CBS. Washington State gets the Apple Cup with Washington on CBS, which I think is unequivocally a win. That's big. That's reach. The question that we continue to ask is, how much are you getting on this TV deal? And the reason we have to ask that is because the Pac-12 isn't saying two words about this and not announcing what the deal is, only to say, hey, here's our broadcast schedule. And sources in the television industry tell us that they are probably grossing, not netting, not walking away with, they are grossing close to $1 million a game. Sources also tell us that the Pac-12 and Pac-12 enterprises are responsible for producing all of the games on their schedule, and that on the ESPN deals, I was told it's more of a licensing type deal where ESPN is going to pay the freight for the broadcasting, essentially the on-air talent, which means the airfare, the accommodations, and the talent fee to broadcast the game. But that the Pac-12 will produce those games. I don't know. I don't see that as an unequivocal win.
I think it's what you had to do, and
I agree.
it. I respect it. I'm not, and we're not going to sit here and I don't think it's a negative thing. I also don't think it's a positive thing. I just think I think the best way to describe what this is you did what you had to do for 2025, and that's great. Cool. I'm glad you got that done. And I would agree. There are some really nice opportunities on here with ESPN and CBS to get the opportunity to play on the big boy networks, right? Not to be on CBS Sports Network or, FS1.
But it's not all of your games. Washington State only gets the Apple Cup on CBS.
Yeah.
And these are all home games, by the way, because I want to remind people, you only control the rights to your home games. Okay, so that's why you don't see their road games here. These are all games that will be in Corvallis and on the Palouse, because that's all they have control of. And I think being on CBS and ESPN, even if you lose a bit of money in those games, if you are, one of the things that was brought to me today was, well, is ESPN, because ESPN is notoriously difficult when it comes to, hey, we want to produce these games, and ESPN and the Pac-12 have had these conversations. Are you telling me that you're going to allow a Pac-12 employee to be the producer and director of that broadcast on ESPN, on CBS? Somehow I have a tough time believing that. And I could see a scenario where CBS and ESPN are like, hey, you've got to use Tom, Dick, and Harry as your director, your AD, and your producer.
Right.